Hey guys, this is Stephanie and I'm Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. Let me just tell you guys, first and foremost, it is so great to be back in front of the camera and the lights and talking to you guys, making videos, and I have missed this so much. I've been too busy for a few months, but life is getting back to normal, so hooray for that. So today I'm going to be coming to you with the mid-year check-in tag. The last 2 years I've done the mid-year freak-out tag, and actually like this one better, but there are a few questions I like off the other one, so I'm going to put those in at the end of this because I do what I want. In addition to which, I'm going to kind of give you a checkup of my 2019 resolutions and where I'm standing with those. And fasten your seatbelts because it doesn't look good. So my first resolution is to read 130 books this year, and I've read 44. So that's not even close to halfway. I'm also trying to read 3 graphic novels a month every month, and I've read 7 total this year. So I'm a little behind on those. But the good news is those are shorter, and I can read more of those, and that's going to bump that number up a little bit more. My third resolution is to complete these 5 book series. Dorothy Must Die, haven't done it. Remnant Chronicles, haven't even started it. Second Mistborn series, I read the first one. The Grisha series, haven't started it. And the Percy Jackson books. I did read the third one, so I guess there's 2 left there. My fourth resolution is to read 6 nonfiction, and I have read 5. Yeah, I'm almost done with one whole resolution. What? Number 5 is to read 60 of my own books, and I've read 27, which is pretty good. Number 6 is to do 4 readathons, and I have done 0. But I will be doing Reading Rush. I will be doing the Get Graphic with It readathon, hosted by yours truly, April, Sarah, and Brews and Reviews, but that'll be in October. And I will probably do the next Tome Infinity and Beyond as well, so I need to find somewhere in there one more readathon to do. Number 7 is to read 7 classics that are not Agatha Christie, and I've read 2, so I need to get on that as well. And then I'm supposed to read 10 big books, as in books that are over 600 pages, and I've read 1. Ugh. My 9th resolution is to buy fewer books. I think I've bought 30 maybe so far this year, which is really good for me because last year I bought 195. So yeah. And number 10 is to reread more books, and I have actually reread 8 books apparently, so yay for that. So all in all, I'm not doing amazingly well, but I will say the last 2 months of reading haven't been great for me. I've been a little too busy to read, but I also always read more the second half of the year, more than the first half of the year, so I'm not going to worry about things. But I do see I have some work cut out for myself. Now, this tag was made by Harriet Rose and Dane Reeds. I will link their tag down below. First question is, how many books have you read so far this year? Like I said, 44. Second question, what is your favorite book so far this year? Now, that is such a subjective question. I've had lots of 5-star reads so far this year, and I've had some books that are really stand out great. So I'm kind of talking about all of them at some point during this video. But this one was one that I didn't see the ending coming, which is hard because I'm pretty good about predicting books. I liked the characters. I liked the journey. It was a little bit slow at first. The first third of the book, I was like, this needs to pick up. But I have a feeling going back and reading it a second time, which I probably won't do this year, I wouldn't find it as slow. I would kind of see some things that I probably should have picked up on the first time. That book is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This was a book club book that I read, and not everybody in the book club gave it 5 stars. I think I might have been the only one. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was clever. It was different. It is one of those books where you wake up and you are a character, but you don't really know what's going on. And that can be super irritating in books, I know. But basically, you wake up in somebody's body. You don't know who you are. You don't know why you're there. You don't really know anything. You go through the majority of your day not really understanding what's going on. And then you're killed. And you wake up the next day, and it's the same day, but you're in somebody else's body. And then you are told that by the end of the day, you have to stop the death of Evelyn Hardcastle. And if you can do that, then this cycle will stop. That's all you're really told. So all you know is that you are basically going to have about 8 days to stop the killer. So I know that's a really weird explanation, but it's kind of a weird book, but it's a good weird, and I really enjoyed it. If you like Agatha Christie's or murder mysteries or kind of twisted mysteries in general, I think you would really enjoy this book. Question 3, what is your most disappointing read? And hands down, no question asked, I'd have to go with Sabriel by Garth Nix. I thought this was like an amazing like fantasy adventure book, and it was painful. It took me about 3 shifts to actually get this whole thing read. I just kept putting it down because I wasn't interested and nothing was happening. And I was just like, this is painfully boring. And they took probably like 3/4 of the book for anything to happen. And then everything happens in the last quarter of the book. I enjoyed the last quarter of the book, but I was severely disappointed in the first like 3/4 of the book. So I find this book a little hard to describe because I feel like I'm giving away the first 3/4 of the book by telling you what it is. But basically, we're following a girl like, I think turn of the 19th century or something like that in Australia, whose father is basically death kind of, but not really. And he goes missing and she has to go on a crusade to save him. Which sounds interesting, but this was not interesting. This is very disappointing. Now, I have been told that Lyriel is better than Sabriel. There's a part of me that is almost willing to read it, but then there's a part of me that's like, I don't know about that. Number 4, what genre have you read the most of? And that would be fiction. I went ahead and counted the 44 books that I read, and 15 of them were fiction, and then everything else fell into other categories. But who's surprised about that? Not me. Number 5, name a new author that you have just discovered this year. Now, this is the first book I have read by this author, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I loved this book, by the way. It was fantastic. I didn't know what to expect from this book. I wasn't 100% sure what it's about. I was kind of told it follows like a Russian mythology kind of, but not, but it's a real world, but it has some mythological kind of characters in it. Now, I am not familiar with Russian mythology in the slightest, so I don't know how accurate that stuff is, but I will tell you it was a great story. It was a great ride. It also was a little slow to start with, and I wasn't 100% sure where things were going. As I was reading it, I was kind of like, what is the point of following this family and this girl? And yes, she's interesting, but things aren't happening. And then things start to happen, and now I'm like actually very excited to pick up the next 2 books in the series. But first book I read by this author, and it was fantastic. Number 6, most surprising read in a good way. And for that, I am going to say Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. Now, it was surprising because I really did like the first book, Vicious, but I tend to not exactly like V.E. Schwab's sequels. I feel like she has a good first book a lot of times, but I feel like when it comes to the sequel, she just doesn't do that well. I feel like she takes good characters and she kind of throws them away. I feel like, let's just say I haven't had good relationships with the sequels that I have read by her, but I very much liked this sequel. I think I might have given this one 5 stars. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it is a sequel, but the first book is Vicious, and we have 2 characters who basically have discovered how to have superpowers, and it's a matter of them using it for good or using it for evil. Then the question of morality comes into it as well, and you're just going to have to read to find out more. Question 7, favorite and most anticipated 2019 release. Now, I've only read 2 books so far this year that were released this year. I did read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the problem with that book is it was so hyped. Everybody's like, it's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing. And I talk more about that in my wrap up for May, but that was not my pick. My pick went to the other book that came out in 2019, which is Slayer by Kristen White. I really liked this. This is basically building on the Buffy universe, and it comes after the TV show ends, and then there's a few graphic novels, and then this one starts up. And it actually is dealing more with the Watcher side of it, and how Watchers are trained, and where they come from, and all of that good stuff. Now, you don't have to read those 3 graphic novels that kind of connect the 2. I didn't, because they basically tell you what happened. But I really enjoyed this. I felt like Kristen White really got the whole Joss Whedon verbiage that he uses for Buffy, which is hilarious. And she had that in there. And I gotta tell you, I think I would enjoy having dinner with Kristen White. I think that she's a huge Buffy fan. And I don't know if I'm a huge Buffy fan, but I'm definitely a Buffy fan. But the writing was so good. It was almost like, I felt like Joss Whedon was writing it. And I know he wasn't, but I kind of felt like he was. And I'd love to know his take on it because I thought it was fantastic. I totally enjoyed this book. And I think it's a series. I think there's more to come. And I'm pretty excited about that because I definitely enjoyed this book. As far as my most anticipated, I have to admit to you guys, I am terrible at knowing what's coming out. Like, I never know what's coming out until somebody's talking about it in BookTube and I'm like, oh, that's coming out. So usually the ones I know coming out are sequels. Like, I know the 3rd one in the Renegades series is coming out. Renegades by Marissa Meyer. What's it called? Supernova. That one's coming out at some point this year. And she's kind of an auto-read author for me. So I will pick that one up. And then Leigh Bardugo has another one coming out. I'm not remembering what it's called, but it had a 9 in the title. And it's supposed to be adult, and it's supposed to be kind of creepy and eerie, and I'll probably read it eventually, but I probably won't read it this year. But I was watching Books and Jam do this tag. She said there's a book coming out called The Binding. I don't remember who it's by, but I'll put a picture up here. Basically, it's kind of futuristic, I think, and this guy's like a farmer, and then they're like, no, you don't get to be a farmer anymore, now you have to go work at the bindery. And basically what the bindery is if you have like memories that you want to get rid of, you take them out of your head and you put them in these books, and they get bound and put somewhere. He has to go work there and do this binding thing that they're telling him to do. And while he's there, he sees a book on the shelf that has his name on it. And I think he takes it down and reads it and finds out that the life he thinks is his life is not his life. What? So I do want to read that one. After hearing about it, I was like, that sounds great. That sounds like something I would love to read. So I'll pick that one up. Number 8, the next big priority for your reading. I'm going to say to read the books I own. I feel like I own so many books that I haven't read. And, you know, I own books so I can read them, not just collect them. And I want to make sure the books in my collection are books that I like. Like, I want to be able to look at the collection I have behind me and be like, oh, she's that kind of person. She reads these kind of books because they're in her background. So I want to make sure I can read all the books in my background. I want to read the books I own. I want to make sure I'm owning books that I like, you know? So basically my priority is to read all of my books. Number 9, bookish highlight of the year. Now, I think they're talking about something that I'm supposed to do that's bookish, but I don't do a lot of bookish things. So I'm just going to highlight a book that I totally enjoyed that I already read this year. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. And that would be Becoming by Michelle Obama. Now, I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I loved this nonfiction. This is a great book. And I also am not into politics like at all. And she doesn't really talk about politics in this book, and I totally loved that. I was like, it was refreshing that she is a politician's wife, but she's so much more than that. She talks about where she came from and how she grew up. She talks about how she met Barack and their relationship. And then she talks about her time in the White House, like how her focus was her daughters and raising her girls and being a mother. And I actually thought that before. When I was in high school, Bill Clinton was in the office, and I remember Chelsea, who's pretty close to my age, was like being a teenager through the White House years with, like, you know, terrible acne and braces and when we look our absolute worst. And here she is on the front page of every paper right behind her dad. And all I thought was, that poor girl. So it was really interesting to get, you know, the first lady's point of view while living there and raising her daughters. And, you know, it was a really good book. Like I said, not a lot of politics, which was great. You really just got to see who Michelle Obama was as a person. And I super liked it. Also, side note, she does read it herself if you get it on audiobook. And then question 10 is, who do you tag? And I'm not going to tag anybody because I'm getting this video out so late. I feel like everybody else has already done it, so whatevs. And as promised, I have 3 questions that I stole from the Freakout tag because I like them and I want to talk about them. So, number 10 in that tag is a book that made you cry. And for this one, I'm going to say Educated by Tara Westover. Now, I loved this book too, so I totally want to talk about it in this tag because I thought this was incredible. So this is a nonfiction book about Tara and about her life growing up. Now, she grew up in a survivalist home in like the mountains in Idaho. She also grew up in a more strict Mormon household. Now, the religion part of this is not really stressed in this book. What's stressed is how controlling of an atmosphere it was to grow up in. Like, they were homeschooled, but they really were taught things like how to drive a tractor, how to deliver a baby, how to can fruit, things like that, versus, you know, like actual like book reading and things like that. And then at one point she decides, I want to have a higher education. I want to go to university. So it's a story about her growing up in this household, what it was like, and then her kind of overcoming things that would normally hold people back to become the person that she wants to be. Which, I'm not giving away a lot of things, but this book made me cry. Hearing the way she grew up, the things that she had to persevere through, the lessons that she had to learn, which a lot of us will learn these lessons when we're like 5, 6, maybe younger, and she's learning them at like 20 and 22. Just the oppressive atmosphere and the negative dynamic of her family, just, it did break me. I did cry. I cried quite a few times when I was reading this book because I just was so saddened by the fact that this goes on even now, even today. But I was also very encouraged by her inner strength of knowing who she was outside of what her parents said she was, of knowing that she could be more than that. And it takes a lot to know who you are and to go against what you were brought up with. And she had that strength, and I found it very admirable. Number 11, a book that made you happy. For this one, I'm going with Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And this is by Maria Semple. I loved this book. I love this book so much. I think I read it in March, so I raved about it then. It made me giggle and cackle and laugh and chuckle, and I might have even spit a little bit of tea into this book. I thought it was great, and I thought it was fun, and I would totally read this book again. I would totally read it again. And it's coming out as a movie, I think like next month. So read it if you want to laugh, and read it before the movie comes out. And then the last question, it was question, I think 14 is what it says. I can't really read my handwriting here, to be honest. The most beautiful book that you have bought or received. Now, I haven't actually purchased a lot of books so far this year, like 20, 25, 30, somewhere in there is what I purchased so far this year. However, I just had my anniversary, and on my anniversary, my husband buys me a book and I buy him a book. And usually what I do is I will hand him a stack of like 4 books and be like, these are the ones I want, and he'll pick one of those 4 books. And we always go to Barnes & Noble and do it. So I'm super picky because, you know, if I can buy a book cheaper online, I'm going to buy it cheaper online. So I like to be picky about the books that I get from Barnes & Noble, and I like to get like Barnes & Noble specialty copies. So what I got was Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and it's scary but beautiful. It's so beautiful, and it's got these red pages, and it has a letter from Kvolth in the front, and it's got a beautiful spine, and you can't see it, but it's engraved. It says Valeritas, which if you've read the book, you know what that means. It just makes me want to reread this. I think I might reread it this summer because it's so pretty. Kind of beautiful and kind of terrifying all at the same time. But that is it. Hopefully I haven't rambled for too long. Basically, I've just missed you guys a ton, and I want to talk about all the books. Is basically what it is. I want you to go ahead and comment down below with the best or one of the best books that you have read so far this year. I would love to know. Or you can comment down below with how many books you've read so far this year, because that is always a good thing to know as well. But please leave a comment. Those are my favorites. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, share, watch it 50 times, whatever makes you happy. And I will have another video back very, very soon. Goodbye.